Hello, and welcome to another edition of Why Are You Laughing at Me with Gherkin Picklewater. My special guest today is improviser and instructor and incredibly funny person, Steven J Burnett. Steven, welcome.
Thank you. Incredibly funny. Ooh.
I think so. Can you tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I feel like I'm a dumb asshole. But you basically summed it up. I teach and perform improv here in San Francisco, the Bay Area, but mostly in San Francisco. And I teach quite a lot at a school here. I do independent coachings, and I'm a director of improv projects. I currently have five improv teams. I'm kind of at my max, and that's basically what has consumed my life for the past several years.
That's very cool. How did you, before we start getting into the nuts and bolts of your sense of humor, how did you get involved with, you're with Leela, right? Or are you still with Leela?
And yeah, I'm currently the associate artistic director there.
That's wonderful. How did you get involved with Leela and when and what brought you to improv in the first place?
Oh my gosh. This is going to be a bit of a story. I mean, and I'll try to keep the meandering to a minimum, but we'll see what happens. I can make no guarantees. How did I? I mean, that is how my improv journey essentially started, was with Leela. Prior to that, I had a background in performing arts, but mostly like college stuff, college and high school and grade school and before that. But I did not do that type of creative stuff for a number of years because I was instead pursuing my passion for partying and alcohol. And there came a day of reckoning in which I realized, oh, this isn't working for me. And I recalled that I was a creative person. But in college, I was pursuing creative writing as well as performing. And it was sort of this like false dichotomy for me. I think when you're young, we're not told anything, we don't know anything, but we're told a lot of things. And I was definitely given the messaging of you have to choose one and be a genius at that. And so, but I couldn't choose between writing and performing. So I kept oscillating back and forth in college as to what my major was. So by the time I got to a space as we'll call it a young adult, and realized that I hadn't been doing anything creative for a long time, I started picking that up. And it started with writing, and I spent a couple of years writing a lot. And I was actually working on a graphic novel project that was getting to a space in which I could shop it around to comic book companies when my computer crashed. And I had to get a new computer. And when I got the new computer, my backup had malfunctioned in some level. And yeah, your face is
Yeah.
your face is the correct face for that. I remember taking it to the Genius Bar because it was a Mac, and my backup to the Genius Bar, and I was like, I've set up the new computer, but my backup is showing from like a year ago, and I know that I had it running, and the employee that worked there was like, "Oh, I'm gonna have to tell you something that I hate telling people. Like, it is showing that you were backing up, and it also did not back up. And added bonus, I have no explanation for that." So I died a little death, and because I'd lost a year of writing and had been working on something that was basically ready to shop around, and now I did not have that. And so I just kind of like took a pause with my writing. I was also running a creative writing group for a little bit of time. And I just kind of stopped all of that. And then I heard about this musical that was in town, and just on a lark was like, oh, maybe I'll audition for that. And I auditioned for it, was cast in it, and had so much fun that theater, all of a sudden, the memories of what it was like to perform in theater, there's this very special warm feeling I get being backstage, being in the green room, and obviously performing, but the whole sort of atmosphere and ambience of that was really nostalgic, and it felt like I needed that again. So but I had gotten out of theater, and specifically music theater, because it's so competitive and people are so mean to each
Oh,
other. Like no one was ever really mean to me, but there was this, and I'm sure we've come a long way, hopefully, but like this was a few decades ago when it was really uber competitive, and I just saw a lot of duplicity in the way that the actors treated each other, and that kind of turned me off to theater. So I'm gonna try to put a button on this story. What ended up having happening, I ended up in Austin at one point and went to, and it was for my birthday. The trip wasn't for my birthday, but it happened to fall along my birthday. And I was traveling with two women that I, okay, my philosophy on birthdays is like I don't care. I've literally booked travel on my birthday just so I don't have to deal with incoming messages and stuff because it just is like meaningless to me, and it I'm not bitter about birthdays, but I just like I don't love the attention of birthdays.
okay.
And but there's another type of human that really loves it's my birthday, it's my birthday month, and these two women are those like birthday month type women. So the whole trip, they were like, "What are we doing for your birthday? What are we gonna do?" You know, and I was like, "I don't fucking know." So there ended up being a few days into the trip, there was a flyer for a Buffy the Vampire Slayer improvised show at a theater called Hideout Theater in Austin, which I can't recommend enough. They are really incredible at what they do out there. And it just so happens that I was a massive Buffy the Vampire Slayer stan. And I've always liked comedy, so I was like, that'll be fun. Let's do that. And it was on my birthday, and I was like, that's what we're doing for my birthday. Look at me, I chose a birthday thing. We ended up going to see that. It was fantastic. It was amazing. And while I was watching it, I was like, I want to do that. So flash forward to a few months later, I went online and looked at reviews of like improv schools, and Leela had the most like had great. A lot of the schools have great reviews. Leela had a lot of personalized sort of testimonials about the culture being kind and empathetic and stuff, and
Okay.
that was important to me because my previous theater experience wasn't the most kind and empathetic, and I didn't want to get into comedy, which can be sort of a specific type of world that could be mean and cutthroat. It was all theoretical to me at the time, but I just wanted to like have a soft little pillowy landing into that. So I took a drop-in class there, and within that first class, I was like, there was somebody plugging a show, and Jill Eichman, the artistic director, was there. She doesn't really even know this, but I was in there and I just saw a path immediately. It's really wild. Sometimes I just get these hits and I was like, I'm gonna perform here. I'm gonna be plugging a show. I'll probably be teaching here. She's gonna be my friend. It was super weird. And all of those things ended up kind of happening really quickly. Like I think my third month, they had auditions for what they call the PI program, which is performing improv ensemble program. And it's different now. Now you have to take at least 4 levels before you can audition. Back then, it was kind of small enough to where you can audition if you were enrolled for any class. So I was still in my level 1 class, and I auditioned for their PI. And it was actually a massive audition because even though the program was small, air quotes, that's how you do that. I forget how to human. Even though the program was small, it was small in that there were only 2 groups. One of them was all female identified, which I don't qualify for, and the other was like an open pie. And there were like at least 50 people there. There were between 40 and 50 for that audition. And so I looked around. I was like, well, I'm not going to get cast. Yeah, and then I auditioned and they cast me. And within a year of that, I was teaching um, drop-in classes, and then within a few months to a year of that, I was teaching levels, and then directing my first pie, which became an indie troupe called Luxury Crew Singles Mixer that plays a lot in the Bay Area. And I'm currently still their director. Feel at this point they just like me a lot, but they just want to hang out with me. But yeah, there you go. That's the long
Well,
version.
there's so much to reflect on and comment on there. I didn't know that about musical theater and the competitiveness. My background is in clown and improv. Those are the two things that I've done the most of. And clown is it's all about vulnerability. And so it's difficult to be competitive in that world. But improv is so entirely about trust and reliance on your partners in your ensemble and your stage. And I can't conceive of being in a cutthroat environment in those two worlds. So that is really left field for me. We when I got into improv, I when I started in clown training, improv was beyond me. I would freeze horribly every time. And I took like a year of classes at Bats, and just it was terrible. They were wonderful. The classes were wonderful. They were wonderful. I was terrible. I was just horrible at it. I had this huge block. And during the pandemic, took some online drop-in classes with my wife as something to do, and that led to joining a paid troupe, which was just yeah, you had to pay to be in part of the troupe. It was yeah, it is an East Bay company that's somewhat well known.
Well, did
Um,
you have to pay for like the director or?
you paid you'd pay for classes, which you did, but then to be part of the troupe, you have to pay a monthly fee to be in the improv troupe. And they've got two or three troops that they charge everyone. Anyway, that's I got out of there fairly quickly and started my own show, which was an improvised variety show, where we had kind of like the Muppets, where the story it's one long form where the story is all what's going on behind stage during the variety show, and then we had actual variety acts come on in between the pieces of long form to be what's going on stage during the show. So, and that ran for a couple of years, and those people were amazing to work with, and again, it's so much about trust and care in the improv world. Um, so comedy is what we're here to talk about. Um, where did where does your sense of humor come from? What was the spark of what you find funny now? Where did that start?
Huh. Yeah, I mean, I suspect, and this is a question you're asking everyone, right? When
Yeah.
you're, yeah, it must be interesting. I don't know. There's that old adage of comedy equals tragedy plus time, right? Like I can't speak universally, from my own experience. It's not that I had this like tragic uh, life necessarily, but I have known pain and awkwardness, and yeah, I should. I'm gonna watch your other interviews at some point and just see. I did watch the Peaches Price one because I was like,
Oh,
oh.
good.
Um, but I'm curious how many people will answer in the same way. But I do think, for me personally, it was a combination of a couple of factors. One, sort of my biology, neurology, meaning, i.e., I was always a weird kid. I was very, I definitely felt like growing up, like not necessarily normal, like, and obviously I'm queer, and so that's maybe a factor of it. But I feel like in recent years, I've discovered other things about the way my brain works. And I definitely didn't feel like it was easy for me to socialize. It felt very challenging for me to socialize. And it very much felt like other humans got some weird manual about what we're supposed to do when we're together that I did not get. And particularly as it pertained to my peers, like I generally got along well with older people, including adults when I was like a fucking toddler. Like I'd be having full on conversations with adults, and my parents were kind of hippies, and would tell me stories as an adult about how, like, when I was a kid, their friends would have really long engaged conversations with me, and I would like sort of hold my end of the conversation. And they'd be like, "Whoa, that kid is trippy. He's like talking to another adult." And little and younger, I got along with too. I liked taking care of little baby things, I guess. I don't remember that as well, but my parents were always like, "You were really good with younger too." But get me around my own peers, and I'm just like, they all seem to know what we're supposed to do, and I didn't know what to do. So there was that awkwardness. There was that made it hard for me to sort of fit in. Then there was my parents themselves were very elaborate storytellers. They would kind of, it was sort of a family ritual. They were kind of like the cool parents, meaning they were young, and they always had people over, and people would take turns telling stories. And both my mom and my dad, in different ways, are really incredible storytellers, and they're funny. Oh yeah. I don't know that I want them to see this and hear that they're funny. I don't want to give them that credit. No, they're funny. And so I was tuned into that sort of skill set to a degree, and learned that I didn't know how to like interact. I can listen or I can perform. The hard part is being in a group and knowing when to be in what conversation, and that can feel really painful and awkward for me. For a long time, I just felt like I was like an alien studying the humans around me to try to figure out how to fit in. And so definitely, like in school and stuff, I felt really weird. I mean, I performed well in school. I was a gifted kid, but the socializing was really hard for me. It was fine. My dad was in the military, and in military bases, we're all kind of like thrown into these random scenarios, and I got along pretty fine. But I guess the day of reckoning for me sort of came in the fifth grade. We moved for like half a school year to Webster City, Iowa, which is the town that both my parents are from originally. And I ended up in a grade school that my mom actually went to. And this is a very small town in Iowa, and they did not have people from out of town, I don't think, ever at their school. And the first week was fucking horrible. They were just mean, just bullying, and like did not like me for really no reason. Like I didn't even interact with them, but they were very bullying. And I remember a couple of days of that happened. Like one day, literally, they were surrounding me and pushing me and knocking me over and stuff. It was weird, and I didn't tell my mom about it because I was like, I had this weird sense of shame. Like, well, they knew I was. They see me, the real me, that I'm a fucking weirdo, you know? So I just remember making the conscious decision at that point in time, and I don't know where I got the idea from. I literally have no idea, but I was like, okay, tomorrow I'm gonna go in, I'm gonna act like everything's great, and I'm just gonna like put this crazy mask on and just be super nice to literally everyone. Like literally just like the people that were just pushing me, I was like, "Hey Chad, how's it going? You look you know," and it worked. all of a sudden the kids liked me, and that was good. So I don't know, that I don't know that I was, and once I got in just a little bit in that way, I learned that I could kind of talk in funny voices, or make observations or kind of poke them in this weird way. Most of my humor comes from knowing someone and poking them. And it's meant to be, it's my love language, but not everybody gets that. And so it has put me in awkward situations before, but it's like, that's literally like me saying I like you is I'm giving you so much shit. And so, um, I do think that was a pivotal moment in which my humor began to happen, I guess.
That's really cool. I mean, as a kid, very similar. Not the traveling. I mean, traveled a lot, moved around a lot, but not army brat. Um, uh, just bouncing from place to place, usually within the same state, Oklahoma mainly, but never fit with other kids.
Wait, did we talk about that? Where in Oklahoma are you from?
The metropolitan area, so Moore, Ardmore, Norman, Oklahoma City.
Shut the fuck up. No. No way. I went to high school in Moore. We ended up in Moore.
Oh, that's very cool.
I went to Westmore High School and graduated there.
I went one of my semesters of high school. I went to a semester of high school in Portland, a semester of high school in Clackamas, which is a suburb of Portland, a semester of high school in Oklahoma City, and my third semester of high school in Portland, and then I left home. Um,
That's
yeah.
tough.
Um, and childhood was school interacting with people was miserable. And to this day, I mean, we are forced by our profession to be extroverts, to interact and be forward and be open and towards people. But I cannot handle a crowd of any size unless I am on stage or being paid, unless I have a very specific role in that interaction, a very specific status, whether that's high or low, whatever the status is. Unless I have a very specific role, I can't handle crowds. I can't handle people, human beings in mass is just, and I desperately wanted to be funny as a kid. Desperately wanted to be funny. And I could write a little back then, and I could express some humor in that, but I was never funny. And that was a big part of what led me to clown was just I wanted to be funnier. And that led me to improv and led me to here. So there is some correlation there. Some correlation and some massive difference. Many people talk about their families or childhood bullying being a spark for the humor, and I never got that spark. That spark didn't never ignited within me in that specific way. Um, so let's talk a little bit about failure. Uh, Doing comedy, performing in general, but doing comedy especially, invites the opportunity to go up and fail massively in front of lots of people, and doing improv even more so, because it's entirely pulling it out of your butt. How do you handle failure? What do you do when your comedy fails?
Why is it gotta be my butt? Is that a gay thing, Gherkin? Or we? Sorry, what was the question was about
What do
what?
you do when your comedy fails? When you don't hit the mark, when it falls flat, or worse, when people take offense?
I mean, offense. I don't know. What do you do? You learn. I think you learn so much. I think there's sort of a maxim of you learn the most from the sets that go really well and the ones where you bomb. The ones that are just, good. I don't know that you learn super much from that. Bombing. What do you do? I mean, that's part of the beauty of improv is that it's an ephemeral art form. It exists in the moment and then it's gone. So part of the practice of improv is letting it go, letting it go always, even when it's great. Although, obviously most improvisers are going to hang on a little bit to the good sets. But most of the practice is letting it be there once it's done. I've definitely had my share of bombing performances. The group that I was in, first group that I was in, the first show that we did, we produced and we had two other acts that were much more experienced on the lineup. We got paid, which is unheard of in improv. But it was because the guy who was our production manager did a really good job of producing it, found a low cost space to rent, and we sold out the tickets. Now I myself sold, there were only 50 seats, and I sold 21 seat, like 21 people. It's part of how I knew I was doing what I was supposed to be doing is that, but also it was a totally double-edged sword because it was like, as soon as I started telling people that I knew, at that point in time, I was just working in restaurants, and I started telling people I was doing improv, and they were like, "Oh my God, that makes so much sense! Like, I can't wait to see you play. You're probably so funny." And I was like, hopeful that that would be the story of my first show, but also I had my doubts. And I remember when we talked about the lineup, I saw the other acts. I had seen one of them perform before, and I knew they were really good, and the other one was just from the image and the name, they were called, and I think they might still be around. I think they're like somewhere not San Francisco, but like San Jose or something. They were called something like Lion, Cobra, Dragon or something. And they were like short form improvisers. And their picture was like like a indie rock album cover. They looked so fucking cool. And I was like, from the name alone, from that picture, they're gonna be good. Like, I don't know, I just knew it. And so I wanted to open. I was like, we need to go first. And our production manager, who did a good job on the business end, was like, we're producing it. We should go last. And I was like, I just had this feeling that that would be bad. Sure enough, it was terrible. Like the drop in, yeah. But both groups performed really, really well. A lot of laughs. Then we got up and we shit the bed for 30 minutes. Like we just did a bunch of things. And I had all of my friends there, 21 plus people. And my friends were a motley crew, a collection of people that I worked with for the most part. Worked in restaurants and queer, and like, so lots of dark senses of humor in the audience. And I was in one scene where my partner was playing like a child, like a very eloquent child. And this is where you fuck up, is where you're like, I'm gonna say the funny thing. And I literally was like, your mother should have aborted you. And the audience gasped. And that was all I heard. And I was like, oh no, like, where are my people? Why are they not laughing? And it was like, because it wasn't funny. It was just like, I'm a grown man being mean to a child, saying a terrible thing to a child. Like, there's no humor in that. So I personally bombed, the whole set bombed. And I don't know specifically what we learned that day, but I will say that anytime I've bombed, it has been a learning experience. There were other shows that I bombed that I was like, oh, I wasn't present with my scene partner. I was going with my big idea rather than collaborating and finding together what we're doing. Or I didn't commit to my character, or I didn't have a want, or instead of being funny, trying to be funny. I mean, the thing with improv is, I remember this as well, like somebody who had been doing it for longer than me. We were talking about that, and she was like, yeah, you're really funny. She's like, but being a funny person doesn't make you a good improviser. And I was like, fucking thanks a lot, And she was like, no, you can be a good improviser. I'm just saying, like, they're different things. And, that's been part of the learning for me, is that it's not just being funny. It's like, you have to be present, mostly be present. And as far as offending audiences, I don't know. I mean, I don't care. It's fucked up to say, but it's like, it's not that I want to offend audiences, but like the minute that I'm thinking, what does the audience think? I've lost the plot for me. So I have to let that go. Like, there's usually people in the audience that know who I am, so they'll probably know what my intentions are if I step in some weird area. There are people that maybe don't know who I am and like wanted to see good, clean family fun. Like, I'm not the most non-blue improviser in the world. Like, I tend to, like, sex and death are very interesting to me. They're sort of these silly things in this weird way. So I play with those, and sometimes people aren't in the mood for that, and I respect that, you know. And I try not to. It's not that I'm trying to. Ooh, I'm going to be subversive, but it's also like, nah, you know, I can't be for everybody, and nobody should be for everybody. Otherwise, you're just kind of a vanilla bean. I don't
You
know.
absolutely can't chase the laugh. You can't go looking to try and make people laugh in improv in clown either. One of the things one of our clown teachers and clown historian Dominique Jandot would say was I've got it tattooed on my arm actually. Be stupid. Never strive for clever. The clever thing is not the right choice.
It's
Uh,
not interesting. It's not.
yeah.
Oh, it's so impermeable. Like, sorry, I didn't mean to.
Oh yeah, no, good. But yeah. So you mentioned about early in this, you talked about improvisers going back to the same well, and holding on to the learning from the good and the bad, but and letting them all go, but also holding on to the good. Um, I'm not sure if this is the accepted term for this or not. But are you familiar with the term super characters?
Mm-mm.
No, I see. I think it's an improv teacher just made that up. That I was taking an improv class from. I was well into being performing with my own company, and I was taking an improv class at a community college because I needed some credits, and that was a thing that they had. And it was not an improv class. It was billed as one, but no one did any actual improv in the entire thing. Everything was scripted. It was super bizarre. But she talked about super characters a lot. And I want to see what you felt about them. This is like a character that you go back to again and again. A character that you can just pull out of your back pocket and throw into a scene. What do you feel about that? And is that something you use? How do you deal with that as a director? Where do you lie on that?
Oh yeah. So the term super characters I haven't heard, but to be clear, like I want to make sure no one thinks that I believe that I'm the authority of improv because there's so much I don't know, and
Yeah.
there will when I die there'll be so much more that I don't know. But I have used a similar term. I call it your stable of characters, your
Okay.
character stable. And how I feel about it is I think it's good to have a stable of characters. Part of my job when I'm training people for long term, and I have the number of the groups that I've had for multiple years at this point. Like, I will challenge individuals to discover new
Mhm.
characters because that is what is magical, I think, is that, you know, you can have a million different super characters, and it's always fun to discover that you can create a totally different character. Like, I think they can be a crutch at times, and definitely there'll be characters that we just inherently relate to or like a lot, so we want to bring those out a lot. And I don't think that's a bad thing. It's part of my teaching that, like, even when I'm like having an individual improviser focus on a skill that is not what they're defaulting to, my purpose there is to challenge their growth edges. It's not to say that I don't like what you're doing. Like, a lot of people will have their comfort zones. A lot of improvisers are maybe good verbally, but not really kinesthetically in their body. So I'll challenge them to do kinesthetic stuff, and but I'll always remind them like I like what you're doing over here, you know, but I want you to live in your body. And then there are other people that are just like, you know, really big in their bodies, but like could be more cerebral or. I found a lot of people will default to low status or high status, so I'll have them practice doing the other side, and it's always hard for them and sometimes I worry that they'll hear in that challenge that I don't like what they're doing. And so I'll always make sure to tell them, no, I know that you're good at that already. We'll come back to it. I still want you to do that, but I want to build you out this way, not just like this one way, you know? So that's my thing on super characters. The other thing is, I would say some of those, if they resonate so much with you, like fucking write a one-person show about them. You probably have a lot of dimension in there to explore and story that you could tell with that character. Some characters, I definitely have a couple of characters that way that I could probably write a whole, they're different per set, but like the body type and the voice and the face, like I could easily write a whole story for any of them, a novel even, and um, so I guess my ultimate sort of point of view around that is that I don't think anybody else gets to tell you whether super characters are good or bad or anything of that sort. And even the concept of good and bad are not useful, I don't think, when we're thinking about art. I think what's interesting to you, you should explore, and then if it's interesting to you, you can probably make it interesting to other people.
Yeah, that makes absolute sense. I've always been of two minds about it because I tend to run towards the thing I'm scared of, but also, if I really like a character, I tend to bring it back, to run it back. And there are two or three characters that are heavily fleshed out that I have fallen to a number of times over the course of the 3 or 4 years that we were doing Cirque. Um, what was it? I had a thought. It was just there a moment ago. Yes. Okay. So speaking still on improv, one of my favorite things to do in a scene when it comes up naturally, when it grows in, and I will definitely leave room for it because I like doing it so much, so that so it can occur naturally, is to play two characters. I mean, you're often playing multiple characters in a long form. But to play them both on stage at the same time is one of my favorite things to do, is to be both characters in a two characters in a two or more person scene, interacting with one another. I love that. What are some things about what are some specific niche aspects of performance that really appeal to you?
Um, hmm. I mean, so mainly I do duos now. I just play with one other improviser and we do a whole set, and I really like that. Um, a couple of those forms will sometimes do that where we play multiple characters in a scene, and I've liked that. I usually default that to being game or pattern in some type of way, which that's a big part of it. I mean, that's a big part of what is interesting to me with like comedy and improv is the idea of patterns. And how to play those and grow those out. So I definitely do that in the way that I play. And I definitely prefer, the other thing is I've done some ensemble stuff recently where I've gotten to do side support, and I love doing side support. So I love doing that, but that is my pattern brain as well. So patterns is a big part of it. Also inspirationally, Um, I like being weird. I like having a character thing. I had a solo cabaret thing where I played a horrible version of myself, and I would make up songs and be mean to the audience, basically. And I enjoyed that. So there is a thing where I'll enjoy coming out as a big character. And one of my favorite duo projects is called Him It, and it's me and Michael Peng, who's in Luxury Crew Singles Mixer, and I love how he plays. He does character work incredibly, and he's also very grounding. Whereas I can just go off if I want to, but so it helps me to have a tether sometimes, and he's very tethering. But that project, which was my idea, subconsciously based on my experiences of like growing, like living, was it also was the result of us having conversations about like Andy Kaufman, but like we come out as aliens pretending to be human, so walking out really weird, and I have a whole voice and a mask where I'm trying to, this is how humans act. And we are asking the audience tips on being human, basically, to start off. So we come out as these huge alien characters, and then we get the suggestion, and then we go into a grounded scene where we're just kind of ourselves. And that contrast I really like. But then from that grounded scene, we spin off gamier scenes where we might do character work, but we always kind of check it back in with that grounded scene. So I guess I like contrasting the very absurd with the very human elements of it and seeing how they sort of interrelate. I'm also interested in comedy as it pertains to sort of the human experience. I don't know. There's a part of me, the longer I do it, the more I want to do dramatic stuff. I feel like it's an illness for people that do improv for a long time, and it's definitely started to happen for me. Um, I had to do for another job. I had to do this thing where I had to cry on demand 4 times a day, and I could do that because I'm an actor, but I wasn't sure that I could do it until I was forced to try it. So now I've had this idea for years. It was post-pandemic. I was thinking about this. I want to do an improv show called like Happy Funny, like Happy Funny Improv Pow or something, and then have somebody that I know is really good at doing serious work, and we would just do a mono scene of like a relationship breaking up, like, and do it for no laughs, like just do, or trauma, like a couple that's lost their child, like literally something terrible. And to me, that is fucking hilarious. Like playing the meanest trick in the world to the audience. Not a, it's gonna sound like I don't like audiences. I love audiences, but I love to fuck with people when I love them. You know what I mean? Like, so that's my love language. So like, there's this part of me that really wants to do this dramatic thing. The other thing I want to do is like a musical. I was thinking about this last night. I want to do a duo with a good singer, and I have someone kind of in mind for this that I may invite to this, but it's definitely something that would have to be rehearsed a lot. I want to do like love stories, like, and I'm gonna play it straight. I'm gonna play a straight guy with a female partner with a good voice, and we're gonna do just like like beautiful music and romantic, just the romantic tropes of a set, like. And then the joke is like I'm gay, but like but also I won't be in the set. Like, I don't know, like I'm playing straight. I don't. Some things are just funny for me, and that has to be enough sometimes.
I absolutely agree that it is not a conflict, but a not a disconnect, something like that, somewhere between a conflict and a disconnect that I have with a number of other people in my clown community. Is your humor, is it for you, or is it for the audience? Who are you trying to appeal to? For me, it's for me, and that's all that matters. If I find it funny, that's what matters to me. But that means the audience may not get as much out of it as I get out of it. Whereas for them, it is about making the audience, and they are in many ways much better performers because they're actually giving the audience what they want, which is the experience the audience came and paid for. Whereas for me, it is just about finding the appeal to me personally.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean,
well,
one of the yeah, it's weird. But what's also, I'm realizing how I'm a hypocrite is that when I train my troops, I do train them to entertain. Like, I don't train them to perform. I train them to entertain by playing with each other and having fun with fucking with each other and having fun with each other. So like in that sense, and that's usually very entertaining for people to watch as an individual. And I want to be in that space. Like, yes, I want everyone to be in on it. But speaking of like bombing, one of my favorite sets, it's not for public consumption. It's on my channel, but I have it like hidden because it's just kind of for me, is that improv cabaret that I was doing. There was one night where it bombed so bad, where the audience was like, the front row, I don't know where, this was at the Exit Theater, the studio, the small version, right in the Tenderloin, and which is nothing to be ashamed of, but I'm just like setting the space where I come out, I'm an asshole, I'm singing about sex and death, and the front row were all these people that were dressed to the nines. They were like in fancy, like I thought I don't know, like they couldn't get into the opera, so they ended up at this improv show. I don't know what the fuck they were doing. They did not like me from the get. They did not get what I was doing, and I got it, and it was just like, it just wasn't going well. And there's a part of that performance where I do a torch, an 11 o'clock number, which is very dramatic. And I ended up singing about like, don't, the song that was basically like, don't worry, you'll get to go, this will all be over soon. You'll get to go home. But then I started singing like, but, but what if I followed you home? What if what if I, what if I murdered you and ate you and boiled and the tagline at the very end I sang boiled in acid and then from the very back was this improviser that knows me and she's British and therefore somewhat sardonic and the video I love it. It's so funny to me even though the audience hates it. And the funniest part is when I sing boiled in acid, you can hear her in the back just like, just cackling. And it's like sort of this weird remembrance for me. Sorry, I just,
That was great.
yeah. Yeah.
All right, I got a couple more questions, and then we'll wrap it up.
Okay.
Um, your comedy icons. Who are they, and who do you think is underrated in your field?
Ooh, and my feel, oh God. Okay, let's start from the beginning. Comedy icons. I mean, growing up, I love that you mentioned the Muppet. I think you mentioned the Muppet Show,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. As a kid, watch that with dinner every night. Obsessed. Like mm, Animal is some version of me. And I think I watched the Carol. Yeah, we watched the Carol Burnett show. No relation. And like sitcoms, Mork and Mindy, Robin Williams for sure. When I first moved to the city, I saw Robin Williams on the street. We made eye contact. He smiled at me. My soul left my body, and then he was gone. It was so crazy. And then I have a thing for like stand up, like particularly female and queer identified stand up comedians. When I was younger, like Rita Rutner, Wanda Sykes, Margaret Cho. I really love Ali Wong. Ooh, Aisha Tyler, and then queer like Mateo Lane, and there's an Australian guy, Reese something. He's a redhead. He looks like a little puppet. Growing up. Yeah, and then like shows, I tend to like adult cartoony comedy thing. Like The Venture Brothers is probably one of my favorite shows of all
Absolutely.
time.
Yeah.
I fuck it. It feels like it was written for me because I was very much like a new wave punk. I wasn't punk, but I was like new wave. That whole new romanticism was exactly what we were doing when I was in high school and early college. And so the music, and then I was also a Marvel comic book fucking geek. And I have a twisted, dark sense of humor. So that show, when it came on, and especially as it evolved, I was like, are these people literally in my fucking head and just regurgitating every thought I've ever had? And well, let's be clear. There's some fucked up shit in that show that I did not. But they ask questions. They ask questions. I think comedy wants to ask the hard questions, and they ask those questions. Some of which, I don't care. But like a lot of which I do. Who is underrated? Oh my God. I don't know that I can even answer that. Who is underrated in my community? Is that the
In
way
your
that
field. Yeah, in your field.
in my field? I don't even know how to answer that. I mean, I will.
It's a hard question, especially when you're thinking of improv and local improv communities. Did you know Jerry Lawler?
Jerry Lutler?
Jerry Lawler, she died a few years ago. She was one of the first teachers I ever had in improv, and she was just brilliant, just amazing, a genius performer. And like I said, she died a few years ago, but that's someone I think never got the break she should have gotten to come out to on a more mainstream stage because she was just so good.
What? And she was a teacher?
She's a teacher at Bats. She was
Yeah.
with Bats for a very long time. Oh, I did have a question for you before we get to the last question that I wanted to do. Earlier, you mentioned both game, pattern and game, and side support. Can you define those for people who don't know improv?
Yeah, yeah, that would probably be good. Also, you said something about stupid that I really resonated with. Yeah, game is funny. It's a funny term that gets bandied about in improv. It literally just means funny. And I ended up having to learn what game meant and what it was because Luxury Cruise, like 3 months after I took them over, I was like, "What are you interested in learning about?" And they were like, "Game," and I was like, I had no training in that. That wasn't a Leela sort of focus. There are other schools that kind of focused on that, but then I'd ask everyone about it, and everyone had a different definition. And then I eventually landed on it just means funny. So then teaching game means, oh, I have to like I ended up going down this weird scientific route where it was like, what is funny? Why do we laugh? What is, and it ended up being really illuminating and interesting to me. But, it's an empathy exchange and it's a surprise reaction. It's a whole bunch of stuff. But game means funny. Pattern literally is anything that's repeated. Sometimes we call it callbacks. But it's highly successful in improv because the audience was there when it happened the first time. And so they feel like, because it's true, the audiences co-create with you in this way. They give you the suggestion. And so calling back to that is really important, that the audience gets to go, oh, right, we made this together and we're celebrating it again. And they're weird, because I'm a fucking insane sciencey person. There's weird sort of mathematical things that can happen with that too, where there's the rule of threes really pleasing, and there's different ways of playing with that formula, but basically repeating that you should do it 3 times, or repeat and then subvert on the third time, or repeat 3 times. If you go 4, then you should do 5. 5 is mathematically prime. It's the same as 3. It's interesting. It's fun. And then if you do it more than 5, then you're doing it the whole set. It goes away from being funny, and then it comes back funnier than ever. So that's my in a nutshell idea around patterns. So we did game patterns. Was there a third thing you asked
Side
about?
support.
Side support is you're not the central focus of a scene, but you're either walking in as a character that is, and it's in the name, supporting the scene. And there's different ways of supporting. I try to have people look at it as ways of heightening the stakes of what's happening in the scene, making the scene absurd, or making the characters feel an emotion.
Interesting.
Yeah. But you can walk on, you can do sound effects, you can call cut twos and cut back. There's all kinds of ways of doing side support.
I mean, we obviously did lots of cut twos and cut backs and time shifts and sound effects with our side support. But a lot of times people would just come on to be background, to be visual building blocks for the scene that weren't necessarily actively interacting with the characters who were doing the scene. Okay, my last question for you, if you're ready for it. I warned you about this one beforehand. Can you tell me a joke?
I'm not really a joke teller. But yeah, no. I had this one about the Jonestown cult, but the punchline was too long.
Oh, that is wonderful. Thank you so much. I'm going to steal that. That's so good. Oh, that is wonderful.
It's
Well,
not good.
Stephen,
It's terrible. It's bad. It's not good.
it's so wonderful. Stephen, thank you so much for joining us, and continue to be wonderful. Oh, where can people find you? That's an important question. Where can people find you and your work and so on if they want to see what you do?
Under a rock. I mean, I'm terrible at social media. I have an Instagram. It's just my name, or Facebook, Steven J Burnett. I don't really. Yeah, I'm bad at marketing. I also teach classes at Leela, but I also do things independently. I coach a bunch of things independently now. But yeah, through my socials, Facebook. I should not say Facebook. That makes me 3,000 years old. Instagram. Yeah, I check those from time to time, so you can find me there. I also perform at Leela. I'm not doing any anything outside right now. I'm kind of doing a reset for the new year. So more stuff is coming up in January.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, Stephen, and thank you for joining us, and thank you all for watching. And I'll let you know when this goes up, okay?
Thank you.
All right. I'll see you later, man. Bye.
Bye.